Hello again, Michael Ware with the Iowa Firearms Coalition. We're doing something special right now. We have with us former representative, Iowa Gubernatorial Candidate Brad Sherman. He's with us today because we did something a little special. We put out a blog that essentially says this is the litmus test for candidates using the Second Amendment. And we sent it to the candidates, or many of them we've been able to get in contact with when we've done this with most. And Brad Sherman was the first guy to raise his hand and said, yes, I'd like to come on. Yes, I'd like to visit. So let me share this screen with everybody. For those of you listening, we'll walk you through that. For those of you watching, you can navigate to IFC's website, iowafc.org. You'll be able to scroll down here real quick and see the most recent blogs. But otherwise, you just click on the media tab, hit the blog, and search down through. And this is what we're talking about. Refining the Iowa's governor's race, the universal Second Amendment litmus test. So we sent this out, and there were some people who were enthusiastic. Brad Sherman was the first. And here are the 4 questions we're going to ask all the candidates, no more, no less. And then we'd like to turn it over to the candidates so that they can tell us what we need to know about them. So the first the first question was this. Here's the context. History has shown that making a rule or posting a sign declaring a place a no-gun zone, such as a high school, does nothing to protect the people gathered there. In fact, there is irrefutable evidence that some of the worst mass murderers specifically chose those sites to avoid armed resistance. Federal law and some states' laws, allow a person with a valid permit to carry a firearm in schools and on school property. The question to the candidate is this: will you support changing Iowa code to support a permit to carry being sufficient for a school?
So yeah, well, thanks for having me on, first of all. But yeah, and it's happy to be with you. But you know, on this question specifically, it's a pretty easy answer for me. I think the answer is yes. I would support that law. You know, like you said, anybody who's been following the whole gun controversy and the people that are anti-gun, they know that that's just when you put up a no gun zone, it's just like an invitation to somebody that wants to do something nefarious. So the only thing I would say is if that you're talking about just parents or somebody that happens to come into the school, correct?
Yes, the Gun-Free School Zone Act on the federal level disallows people within 1,000 feet of a school with a gun. But there are obviously exceptions and exemptions to that. And one of them happens to be a permit to carry from the state that you reside. And so, for example, if I had a permit to carry from the state of Iowa, I would be exempt for being in violation of that, and I could come and go in and out of school as I saw fit. So you're talking about a vetted person that's had training, that's had a background check, being able to carry there rather than everywhere else around them with no problem. Everywhere you go, people are carrying in Iowa, and you just be able to extend the protection there. It's obvious, it's a no-brainer, but we have Brad Sherman, we have seen too often the word school and gun be put together in a way that it makes our spine go numb. We get chills. And so that's basically propaganda and loads of it and lots of years of it. So we need to break down that silly paradigm because, well, it's patently wrong. It gets people hurt. And so we don't want that. And so this would be an effort towards doing something that actually makes sense and allows anything that does go wrong that's bad, have everybody or the people that were there that were carrying would have an option to step in and try and curb violence. So that's the question and that's the context.
Yeah, anybody who is planning on doing something bad or nefarious, they're not going to worry about the law anyway. So the law does absolutely nothing to stop bad things from happening.
Agreed. Question 2. Here we go. So when an employer bans the possession of a firearm or ammunition in a private vehicle or on employer property, employers must face a choice of employees must face a choice of risking dismissal by ignoring the rule or being disarmed from the time that they leave home until they return, no matter how long their commute or how many other places they need to visit. IFC believes that the proper place to draw the line between the rights of employers and the rights, including the expectation of privacy and the right to be armed in self-defense, is the locked door of a private vehicle. The laws of at least 6 other states agree. So the question before us is, will you support legislation to protect Iowans from the de facto firearm ban on private and public employer parking lots?
Yeah, once again, I mean, these seem like pretty simple questions. Yeah, but I mean, most people that are carriers that carry a firearm, they keep them in their car a lot.
Yeah.
And it's just an undue burden to make somebody a criminal just because they happen to drive through a parking lot, and so I totally support this idea. In fact, this has come up before, so this is not a new concept. We need to fix this one.
I don't disagree. There are people who are being let go because they stuck their shotgun and they want to try and leave work as quick as possible and get out to the hunting stand or the blind or whatever with a few hours of light they've got left. We're heading into that season, and they're getting fired from work. We know people that have been let go for this. I know a gentleman who was let go from his job because he forgot that his turkey gun was in the trunk, remembered it at lunch when they were talking about what some of his buddies and what they were going to do that day. He self-reported to his workplace and they fired him. Wow. So, I mean, these are the kinds of things that are absolutely nutty, and I believe that they need to be rectified. So thank you for the answer. The third question, here's the context. Since 1934, federal law has tightly regulated, but does not prohibit the private ownership of machine guns, suppressors, short-barreled rifles, shotguns, destructive devices, explosives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Iowa law terms these offensive weapons. Since 2016 and 17, Iowa has allowed for the private ownership of the use of suppressors, short-barrel rifles, and shotguns. The repeal of the state's earlier prohibition has not resulted in any apparent problems. Iowa is one of only 14 states that ban the private possession of machine guns, even when in full compliance with federal law. Nationwide, crime committed with lawfully possessed machine guns has been almost non-existent. IFC believes Iowa's ban on offensive weapons is redundant and unnecessary. So the question is, will you support removing 724.1, which is where offensive weapons is listed in codes, and the relating statutes from Iowa Code?
Yeah, well, I haven't had a chance to comb through that section of code, but based on what you're saying, I would say, yes, I am. I think, getting beyond federal law doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, we do have the suppressors now. And that's legal. I'd like to see the restrictions eased up on suppressors. They're far too expensive, far too difficult to get. I mean, they don't. It's just one of those things. It's another burden on gun owners to have to pay that much for a suppressor and go through the licensing process. And some states make it more difficult than others as well just to get them. So it's a long process. So as far as machine guns, like you mentioned in your comments there, I mean, nobody's committing crimes with machine guns. But the basis of the Second Amendment is this: that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I mean, that's a much more foundational concept. I mean, we still have a lot of infringements. And so, I mean, that's the my basic thought pattern on that issue.
Okay. Thank you for that. Our fourth question is, here's the context. The Iowa Firearms Coalition advocates for the creation of a specialty Gadsden flag license plate in Iowa, symbolizing Second Amendment rights and opposition to governmental overreach. The plate is intended to be a voluntary funding mechanism for 2A educational programs through an additional fee. Despite passing the Iowa House with bipartisan support 2 years consecutively, the measure failed in the Senate, prompting IFC to urge Iowans to contact their legislators in support of the plate, which they see as a reflection of the will of the people, especially following the passage of the state's Freedom Amendment. This historical "Don't Tread on Me" motto of the Gadsden flag is highlighted as a powerful statement against government intrusion. So the question is, will you support the Gadsden plate legislation that directs voluntary funding for 2A education, safety, and training?
Yes, that'd be a great idea. I would support that. In fact, I think that came up. I think it passed the House. Isn't that right? Didn't you say that?
Yeah, yeah, 2 years
So
in a row. Yeah.
yeah, so that's when I was there. I'm sure I voted for that. There's no reason why we can't do that. So training is very important, and that Gadsden flag is an icon that a lot of people appreciate. So I see no reason why we shouldn't have that.
Fair enough. Thank you. So we've asked the 4 questions we want to ask of everybody. We want to pare it down to some basic items that IFC is working on, NRA is working on with us, others, and you've answered those questions. So we've got Brad Sherman with us. Now's your opportunity, if you don't mind. We're talking with 2026 Iowa gubernatorial candidates. And Brad Sherman is here. We'd like to ask you if there's anything that we need to know about you. The floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Yeah, well, again, appreciate it. But while we're still on the whole gun issue, and I remember when I was a kid in high school, I used to drive to school. I had an old pickup. I would drive to school every day. I had a rifle hanging in the back rack of the window, and I don't know if it was loaded or not. I don't remember, but I didn't even lock the doors. We just parked in the parking lot and went to school. And that's the way it used to be. I'm not, but nowadays things have gotten worse. And I'm not necessarily advocating that guns should be left with open access like that. Don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not, but it just goes to show you where our culture has gone. And I think it was William Penn who said, if people will not be governed by God or ruled by God or governed by God, they will be ruled by tyrants. And so that's just one of the most important principles that we can get, is that we have to get values back into our educational system. We have to bring God back into our schools. I've been a pastor for 44 years, and I believe that if we can put a sense of accountability to God back in people, we certainly don't want to enforce or force anybody into any kind of religion. Like, I'm a Christian. I don't believe you can't force anybody into being a Christian. If you did, it wouldn't be Christianity anymore. But somebody's values will certainly shape public policy, and we have to get back to putting those values out there to at least create a sense of accountability to God in people's minds. There are so many people these days that have absolutely no remorse. And we just witnessed the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and the internet is full of people who are just rejoicing about it. I'm absolutely gassed. I can't even fathom that. I don't care how much I disagree with someone politically, to just assassinate them in public and they go, yeah, that's a good thing. That's crazy. And especially Charlie Kirk, who was just a strong Christian who was just trying to have a logical and reasonable conversation with people on the issues. It's where this world's gotten to. It's unbelievable. So anyway, I had to vent that a little bit there. So just get that out of my heart. But to let people know a little bit about where I'm from, I grew up in a family that my dad had an excavating business. I grew up driving dozers and drag lines, and we did a lot of ditch digging to drain wet, swampy land where we grew up. And so I always make the joke that I literally have swamp draining experience. And so that's something that does apply to politics. One of the things I noticed, a lot of the work we did in drainage work was to clean out old ditches that had filled up and gotten blocked. And the point I'm making is that the swamp will reestablish itself pretty quickly if we don't stay diligent. And so that's something I think anybody who's going to run for office or be an elected official needs to understand, is that the swamp is always there trying to reestablish itself. And we need to have a firm commitments, for integrity, for honesty, for transparency, and to keep transparency is kind of my parallel to this open ditch that will keep things drained. We need to be open to the public. And, the actual slogan for our campaign is restoring the foundations of freedom. And that's something it's been my heartbeat for 4 decades. That's not just a slogan that we came up with. My wife and I moved to Iowa City in 1981. And when we got there, we started a campus church, and we've been doing ministry there ever since for 44 years. And so one of the things we noticed was the socialism, the Marxism, the indoctrination, the left-wing ideology that was at the campuses. And it was almost every campus you went to, you found it. And so that's when we started trying to inform and teach people about the founding principles of this nation, the foundations of our freedom. George Mason said he's a father of the Bill of Rights. So, and he said, if free people do not examine their liberties, they risk losing these rights. And so that's one of the big issues with our campaign, is to educate people on the founding principles of America, how we obtained our freedoms, and to really move this back into the people through education. Thomas Jefferson said, he said, I know of no safe depositor of the ultimate powers of society but the people themselves. And if we think them not capable or enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. Mm-hmm. And so I realize that we need legislation, and we have to have law enforcement to keep things in order. But the true answer is to put the law back in people's minds, to educate them, put it in their minds and their heart, so that they know how to do the right thing themselves. That's a concept called self-government. And if we can reestablish self-government, we don't need big government, to tell us what to do, because we're going to do the right thing already. And that's the basis around this whole anti-gun movement, is they think that somehow removing guns is going to fix the problem. It won't. The problem is in people's hearts. And so guns have never killed anybody. It's people that kill people. Guns don't commit crimes. People commit crimes. And so that's what we have to do, is we have to get back to those principles. And that's really a core principle of my campaign, is putting government back in the people through education. And so really revamping our education system and getting these values that we need, the values that our nation rests on, the foundations of our freedom, back into our education system. So that's something I really, really feel strongly about. I mean, there are many issues out there. I'm sure you're aware. We've got the whole eminent domain issue is a big issue in Iowa. We've got property taxes is a big issue. We got medical freedom is a huge issue. People are still ticked off about what happened during COVID and the violation of our rights during COVID. We've got a problem with human trafficking here in Iowa that needs to be fixed. But underneath all of this is this issue of having the laws ingrained in our hearts and in our minds. So anyway, I could go on. I don't want to get my entire stump speech here, but that's what I want people to know, and I'm committed to transparency in government, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only candidate running for governor right now who did not check with the political bosses to see if I should run. We prayed, asked God, and we're absolutely confident that he led us to run in this race. And so that's why we're doing it. In fact, I called Governor Reynolds back in November of last year. It's almost a year ago now, and told her that we had prayed about this. We felt confident we were being led to do this, and it wasn't necessarily about her. It was just that we had to do this. And so that's why I was the only candidate that jumped in the race before she said she wasn't running. And so I think that speaks to the clarity and the confidence I have in the leading and the direction on this. So anyway, that's a little short version of what I would like people to know about our campaign. And our website is shermanforiowa.com. So there's more there. But if you have any questions, you feel free to ask.
Okay. So you've given us a little bit about you. You've answered the 4 questions that IFC wanted to know about, because those are top legislative items for us moving forward. And we can find you at shermanforiowa.com. I'm assuming you're inundated through social media and all those other spheres. Do you have anything coming up that we need to know about immediately? Because this is going to publish very soon. Do you have upcoming dates, meet and greets, things like that? And if so, because people are going to watch this for a number of months, how do they go see where you're going to be and what you're going to be talking about?
Well, the best thing to do is get on Facebook and follow us on Facebook. You can search for Sherman for Governor and find it. And we don't post it on the website because it's a little more awkward to try to keep a website updated. But Facebook's pretty easy. We try to put things up there. Tomorrow morning, going to a trap shoot. That's one thing coming up. So, but that's where people can find us. One thing I should mention, since we're talking about guns, and this is the Iowa Firearms Coalition, is I'm also a hobby gunsmith. That's my, if I wasn't running for office, I'd be out in my shop building a custom revolver right now. That's what I would be doing. I have a lathing machine, and I like to build custom single action revolvers on the same order as what John Linebaugh built. John became a friend of mine. I was able to go to his shoot, and he took me through his shop and gave me some tips and pointers, and because he makes some of the best action revolvers out there. And so I feel like that was a privilege. Of course, John passed away a few years ago. That was just a real shocker, but really a loss. But nevertheless, that's one of those things I was going to throw into our talk today, and I forgot until now. But so yeah, go to our website, check us out, get on Facebook, and any questions you have, send them in.
Fantastic. Sherman for Iowa.com, Iowa 2026 gubernatorial candidate Brad Sherman. Thank you for joining us today. Everybody out there, watch this, spread it around. And if you want to know more about candidates, keep coming back. We're going to keep doing it. Thank you.